Alright, in this video I'll be showing how to use the markers to put values down on the page. So I have some objects here I've already sketched and some space to sketch some new objects after I've used these markers. So the great thing, I will also be showing how to use the white pencil and the gel ink as well. So the wonderful thing about these markers is that they are pretty quick to fill in a space. So if we have this cube right here and we use our 1, 2, 3 rule to get the value differences. If this is my one side because light is coming something from a top angle, so this is the brightest side of this. This is my 2 side and this is my 3 side. If I choose the value of the page as the value of the object, so this is about 20%, halfway to black of 20% makes, let's actually write that down, halfway to black, this makes that 20%. 100 minus 20 is 80 divided by 2 is 40, 40 plus 20 is about 60%. Halfway between those two is 40%. All right, so I have a 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9, which means I don't have 60%. So my options are, I think I'm just going to take the 5 for the darker side here. And I like to fill in the edges first so that I'm sure to have my edges as clean as possible. And then after that, go really fast and clean up my edges one more time. The result of that is that the marker was on the page very quickly and evenly, so that as it dries it should blend together. Again, I was using the 5 for that one. I'm gonna let that dry a little bit on that because I was right, there's a 5, but this is actually 60% on that side. And now I will use a number 3. I'm very cautious of my edges at first. Fill that in fast. The goal is to get an even blend on the page. Now, my 5 has had some time to dry, so I can actually go back over it and make it just a bit darker. What will probably happen is, yes, I do have some bleeding on the back of the page. That is perfectly fine. What is my next step? I made this a little darker. I can actually come in with the white pencil just for some visual interest on this. And do a small gradient across that top surface. The gradient is nice because I'm saying right that the light is coming from this direction, so some light is hitting this corner just a bit more than over here. Also, it gives a nice contrast between the top surface and this surface right here. One last thing I can do, right? I started off when I made these, before I even started this video, with the S pen. Maybe I want to come back and just clean up my edges a little bit with the F here. Right. Just make sure everything is neat and tidy. If I went over the marker on those lines just a bit too much, this allows me an opportunity to clean it up. I'm not making them super thick to cover up any mistakes, right? We go over a little bit right here and over there, and that's fine, but just to tidy up a little bit, not a lot. So now I got this cylinder, and similarly, if my light is going in this direction, that makes my core shadow right about here. Again, if I'm going with the value of the page similar to this cube, then this should be about 60%, which means I will start again with my 5 for my core shadow there. We can use a brush tip or we can use the chisel tip. I'll start off with the chisel tip. Making that pretty thick. Come now with my 3 and try to blend that out. Right, pulling a little bit of the ink from the 5 because it's so wet on there through to the 3, even continuing on into the 1. In this instance, I ended up with a brush tip because I want to work fast, I'm going to leave the brush tip there. It's had a little bit of time to dry. I'm going to come back to my 5 again, and thicken it up a bit more. Come back to my 3, pull some of the ink as it's wet to help me blend, because I'm going from 3 to 5. Open up my 1 again, blend that a little bit more. Still going for edges as clean as possible. Try and leave a little space for reflected light right there. Maybe even after I put my 5 down on the page here, I will even come with a 7 just to make it a little darker. Ooh. Pull that out with a 5. Just so I can try and get closer to that 60% over the 50% that I was starting off with. Can leave some space for reflected light. Very cautious about my edges, right? Trying to keep them clean. I don't want lots of little like chisel marks showing all over the place. I'll show a bad example shortly. So here's my core shadow, the darkest spot, because the least amount of light hitting this cylinder. And now I can even come in and put some light hitting this surface here with the white pencil. Holding the pencil, not pointed down, but on the edge of it to get the whole broad side of that pencil there. We can even get a little bit on the top of the surface here, similar to this one over there, the cube. And again, I start off with the S for the thickness of the pen. So clean this up just a little bit with the F. Going a little bit slower as I'll sort of hook around, so I'm sure not to make a corner out of this edge there, and hook around again. All right, so there's a cylinder using the marker. Note again the clean edges here, trying to keep the crisp clean edges, because this is a crisp sharp object, like this, not sharp, but it has some crisp edges there between the top surface and the side surface there. So I have these smaller cubes right here, and we'll do some darker objects. So say we have a cube that is, let's just jump into it. If the top surface is 70%, again, doing my outline first and filling that in really fast so it blends, coming once over, cleaning up that edge. So if my top is 70%, halfway to black makes it 100 minus 70 is 30, makes it 85. This side is 85%. I don't have 85. I have 7 and I have 9. So I am going to come over here with a 7 again, fill it in while it's still wet, then go over it with a 9. What happens when I go over it with the 9, but with the 7 down there first, means it's not going to be as dark if I had just put the 9 ink there first. So now I got 70, I got 7 and 9 together to make it just a little bit lighter. So halfway between 85 and 70 is 7, 77 and a half. So I will go over this one also with the 7. Again, get these clean edges here. This most important part. And I won't even wait for it to dry, and I'm going to go over it again just to make it darker. So the other thing we're seeing here, is that dark objects don't have a lot of contrast. What I can do though to try and bring out a little bit of that contrast is maybe on this edge, just put a little bit of light hitting it so you can see that edge. Even just a little bit of white pencil here, but not too much, similar to what we did over there. I can also come back and once again try and clean up my edges a little bit with a thicker pen. right? If the marker went over, the most important part here, right, is that I do have some well-defined edges. I hope it picks up on the video, but it's just a little bit lighter right here than it is over here, and I really like that to help show the differentiation between the two edges on this cube. But I'm okay with it also because it's a very dark object. There's not a lot of contrast between the sides because the values are so similar. All right, what's next? We have a lot of other options in having to fill it in like this. So I want to save myself some time maybe, right? And how can I do less work on the page? Well, one, I can make the top of my object lighter, right? So bring the value up, right, from 20% to like almost 0 by doing the white there. And if that's white, then this is about 50%. So we can go in with the 50 here. And again, those edges are the most important part. And very quickly, right, I have a 1, 2, and 3 side on this cube, right, leaving this side of the cube to be the same value as the page there. What else can I do to this thing? I know I want to show you. Let's do this again. And we'll actually, since we already have the 50 here, again, blend it, get those edges, and even one more time right here. Let's get the white on the top. And here's something that people do often. I hope this is thick enough. No, I'm gonna double up this line. And almost triple it up. 1, 2, 3. Oh, that is so thick. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, this is what I see people do sometimes, and I don't like it. I'll explain that in a moment. But let's see the other thing that people like to do sometimes that I also don't think is a good idea to do a lot. Sometimes, now and then, maybe, but if you can avoid it, I would. All right, so now I'm using the gel pen. I'm going all around this thing. All right. Oh, right. So we got this cube, and this cube. They look really similar. Well, actually, similar, right? This is white. This is 50% white, 50% white, 50%. But this one has this thick outline right here with the pen, and this one has this outline with the gel ink pen right here. So people do this because it gives us some contrast on the page. That said, I don't think it's the best way to always give us some contrast on the page, because we're trying to make this thing dimensional by having the contrast between these sides, by having either a really thick outline, whether that's a dark outline or a light outline, kind of flattens the object a little bit, right? And if our goal is to represent volume, right, and dimension, this is closer to reality than either of these two. So I only try to use either of these two methods in rare exceptional cases over often and frequently. Yes, it kind of looks cool, but it isn't a less accurate representation of reality, which is what we're going for most of the time. So keep it in your back pocket, but don't use it all the time, please. You know, something you can do is, actually, let's not use the F for that. Let's use the S, right? We can plot a shadow here. This is a 5, and it's a little lighter than the surface of the paper right here, because of the paper, right, is the background, and it's like about 20%. I want a difference between those two. It should be maybe closer to like 70% right there. So I can fill in that edge. And right, now this one has a bit more contrast, and that contrast came with an additional level of reality, not a level of unreality such as these ones have. So adding a shadow like this is a way to draw contrast. Again, it keeps the sketch closer to reality than a exaggeration of reality. All right, what else do we have right here? I got this surface right here, this curve bending in space. What this curve is very much like is this cylinder. So I'll rotate my page so it's easy for me to sketch it. Here's my core shadow where the least amount of light is hitting this thing. Blend that out, blend that out. Let's go to the 3. Go to the 1. And try and keep these edges clean. Let's go back to the 5. Back to the 3 to blend that out. And back to the 1 to blend that as well. I maybe gotta let that dry a little bit more because I have a strong core, but I don't have enough of the, I actually have a decent gradient, but I want just a little bit more. So let me come back to the 5 and the 3 to blend that out. All right, so there's that. This thing's casting a shadow, similar to up here. I think the shadow is going to be a little dark. Well, if this is the core right here, I'm kind of working with this one where if the core is a 5, then this thing is kind of almost white. And if we're working with this surface right here, where it's about 20%, then yes, the shadow would be a little bit darker. It would be like a 70. If that shadow's a 70, then I'm definitely going to get this bottom to be a little bit darker because it's going to be, the reflected light isn't going to be as bright. So I'll put that in there. Lastly, we can come back with the white pencil again on the broad side here. Try to do a little bit of a gradient. Line up the pencil and definitely leave some of the page showing through. Leaving the value of the page showing through saves us from putting ink on the paper. It also helps us use every bit of resource and tool available to us on the page. All right, so now right here I have this like curved plane in space. I have a cylinder right here. How to do the cylinder? Ooh, oh, sorry, this is not a cylinder. This is a sphere. Again, if I'm working with the same value as I'm working with up here and over here, it means I got my 5, my 1, and my 3. We'll start off with the 5 with this core. Come down to a 3. Also blend up a little bit and blend even more with my 1. My 1 maybe seems to be drying out a little bit, which is unfortunate. So that's going to make blending a little harder. So let's be sure to refill that shortly. But it doesn't mean we can't get a little blending in here. It is a little harder. Just a little bit from the 7 in there, just to make it darker, because the 5 isn't getting as dark as I want to. Let's come back to the 3. Not happy with this blend right there. Maybe crawling up the side a little bit and down like that. Similar, we're gonna have a little dark spot right there as the shadow. Right, get some reflected light in there. Good. Really focusing on some clean edges, so it's all how you hold the pen and work on those edges. Again, some white. Gradient transition, leaving some value of the page to show through. Come back, make the outline thicker with the line work, sort of clean up my edges a little bit. Right, so there is my sphere. So what else can I do on this page to show you how to use the marker? Well, I think I can just give you maybe a broad exercise. S, right, of the general principle that I've been doing here for the blending. Right. So I want to go from, if I want to go from 7 to 5 to 3 to 1, I want to blend between them in this space right there. So I'll start off with my 7. I'll use most of the chisel tips right here. Right. Then I pick up my 5 real fast. Try and pick up some of the ink from the 7 and pull it over. Pick up my 3 and do a similar thing. Pull some of the ink over from all of those. Pick up my 1. And pull some of that ink over. Right, so now I can come back and do it all over again. You just get a little darker everywhere, especially there at the beginning. Don't go as far. Just clean up that edge just a little bit, pull some of the ink. And right, I have some left of some value of the page left right there, so let's come in again with our white pencil. The edges are really important to me. Right, so now I've gone from 7 to about a 5, 3, 1, and the page value to the white pencil there. And lastly, we can clean that up, that edge. By making it a little thicker. And maybe even this I just clean up. I'll do that. So showing the blending. all these objects right now, I'm saying these objects are matte. They're not reflective. They are just plain objects with no reflection on them. Similar to this cube, right? It is matte objects. Now, let's show a little bit more of this gelling pen and do like a slightly reflective object. How do I want to do that? I think I know. I think I want to do like a chrome piece. All right, so if I have a reflective object, like a piece of a bumper or something, let's sketch this out. Right, so there is an edge right here that's kind of curving and round and soft. That's an opportunity to make this thing reflective. And most of my light's coming from this direction over here. So it is reflective but not mirror finished. So I still will follow a little bit. Of light and dark. Edges and rounded corners will get darker and brighter because what's happening is more light is compressing in those areas. We do get like maybe a little bit of reflection in there. Light's coming from this direction, so I got maybe that right there, and that right there. So because of that, each of those might be coming actually from like a spotlight. Right, and that is a reflection of the spotlight on that object right there. So it's casting little light similar to here on the surface, but also we see the reflection of those lights on that surface. Now, something else that interesting that happens on surfaces like that is that we want reflected light to follow the form. So in this, if I have these three surfaces that are three separate parts right next to each other, right, we can just see a little bit of the surface in there. What essentially is happening if we zoom in on this area is we see this. Right? So there's a little crevice in between. And there's a little round section right here, and also here and here. So if light is coming from this direction to hit that object, then each of those little round sections is going to get some light. Even this one down here, right? It's going to get some light, whereas the other part of it won't. So let's just make that a little darker. right? So a little bit of light just hitting that round section. The next thing though is if the light's hitting it, again, we have like a spotlight, we have like 2 spotlights on it. Maybe here's 1 spotlight, and here's another spotlight. But right here, maybe this gets just compressed a little bit because this thing is thinner, right? This piece is tinier, and then again, right here, and right here. So whereas this maybe goes over the surface a little bit, this doesn't as much. And it kind of looks like that. So just a little bit of spotlight, and then where it rolls, right? This is facing up where there's no light, and this is facing it where there is a light right there. So, and this is facing the light at that angle, but another angle is not facing light. So just in that one little area, we get just a little bit of a reflection there. I think the next thing I want to show is also the difference of what I was trying to show here. I think what I missed was, right, if we have this object, right? So I have these 2 surfaces, and again, I might have, say, let's actually put a little bit of lighting value on here to make it more differentiate from each other. Right, so this is this underside where no light is hitting it. Then we have, starting with a 1 is a bad idea. I should start at least with a 3. All right, and the surface is, you know, some light is hitting it. And the light is a spotlight or 2. Right here, again, it might be really tiny because this surface is so tiny, but on this larger surface, that spotlight might be larger because we're seeing a larger reflection of those 2 spotlights. Right, so that's about 30 minutes of marker work, matte surfaces, some gradients and how to do that, and a little bit about reflection and using the white pen. Oh, don't forget to name and date everything. So, and that was 30 minutes.